Hello, and welcome to the Progress Report. I'm your host, Sarah B. Nelson, Chief Design Officer for Kyndryl Vital, and we have a fantastic conversation today. And specifically, we're going to address a really interesting area, which is about cybersecurity and underserved communities. And looking at that relationship between large enterprises who allocate a lot of resources to cybersecurity, and that kind of contrast between individuals and smaller organizations in underserved communities who often don't have that same access to the tools, to the knowledge, to the skills, and that leaves these folks vulnerable to online threats. We're also going to discuss how large enterprises can contribute to that expanding pool of diverse and skilled talent and create a safe digital experience for the broader global community. So we have some fantastic guests today, and I just want to welcome you all. We have Lauren Buda, Amelia Panicam, and Pam Hacker. Lauren is the founder and CEO of Girl Security, one of the most influential people in security, according to Security Magazine. And then we have Amelia Panicam, and she's a third-year computer science student at the Georgia Institute of Technology. And she's a program assistant in Girl Security, working on mentorship and professional development. And Pam is our Kyndryl's Vice President of Social Impact, leading the global strategy for social impact, driving progress into our 60 countries and the diverse communities where our Kyndryls live and work. So Lauren, I want to start with you. Can you tell us a little bit about Girl Security?
Yeah, so Girl Security is a national nonprofit organization, and we're really leveraging the insights and skill sets of vulnerable populations and underrepresented populations of girls, women, and gender minority youth to transform both how we think about pathways into security, including cybersecurity and artificial intelligence, but also how we think about shaping solutions to the security challenges that these technologies represent.
And then Amelia, how did you get involved with Girl Security?
Yeah, funny enough, I was actually reflecting on this. I remember seeing, I think a social media post when I was a junior in high school, and they were talking about being a mentee for their mentorship program, which I now help run, which is so fun and exciting and really full circle. And to be honest, I had never really considered a career in national security. It was really unconventional in my family. It was like be a doctor, an engineer, or a lawyer. And those are my three options. And so this is just something I really wanted to explore.
And Pam, we're going to talk a lot more about enterprise, but I'm curious about what Kyndryl sort of is approach to this.
In general, how we look at social impact is how we support communities where our Kyndryls work and live. And whether that's supporting underserved or under-resourced communities or finding ways to skill up our young and truthfully, new generations coming into tech, we're constantly looking for ways of how we can give back. It's part of how we as Kyndryls operate. It's how we do business. And it makes perfect sense of, how we give back to the communities on a daily basis.
So Lauren, this one's for you. What are the underrepresented communities that are most at risk from cyber threats?
I mean, the name of our organization sort of speaks to at least the focus for us. We really believe that vulnerable, especially communities of girls and women, and in the communities we're serving, which are considered lower income, these communities also lack access to public transportation, access to schools in some communities, health and wellness, and also our food deserts. So in our mind, these populations understand insecurity and vulnerability more than anyone else, because on top of that, there's so little emphasis on the importance of the role of girls in spaces like cybersecurity and related pathways. And I had the opportunity yesterday to visit with one of our new high school clinics on the south side of Chicago. And this is a community that's bordered by gang violence and has been largely underinvested in. And within that community we're serving, we had a number of girls who were interested in cybersecurity, but it was certainly not on the menu for them, even among their school counselors and college and career associates. So for us, that population, which is so untapped, but so deeply understands insecurity, has such unique insights to lend to how we think about not just cybersecurity, but I think broadly security for society. And so we really put our emphasis on that population. And it's a national population. We have supported small global populations of girls and young women in Afghanistan, the Republic of Georgia, and other countries. But primarily, we're focused on those communities throughout the United States.
So, Lauren, I'm curious about small organizations and the kinds of unique cybersecurity challenges that they face. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think there's different types of institutions that present different challenges. Certainly, the institutions that we work most closely with are schools and community-based organization. And there, it's a matter of lack of capacity and lack of resources. In other words, schools are overstretched, as we well know, and their attempts to account for things like chronic absenteeism, mental health, literacy rates. And so the added challenge of layering in cybersecurity support, it's a challenge that I think schools are becoming more aware of and implementing certain tools, but I think at scale, we have a long way to go. I would say smaller businesses are also highly vulnerable. Speaking as sort of an entrepreneur, as someone who founded something, I think cybersecurity, if not for the knowledge that I had, would be very low on the checklist of ensuring that I had a profitable business that supported my family and community. So I think small businesses, as well as community-based organizations, including churches or other faith-based institutions and affordable housing organizations. And Girls Security does a lot of one-off trainings with those community-based organizations. But again, you're talking about sort of small, localized institutions that have limited capacity, limited resources, and just limited awareness and access to that type of information.
I can think of many cybersecurity challenges like social engineering, misinformation, disinformation, cyberbullying, like deepfakes and AI. I almost look at this perspective in how my generation responds to these threats and how they will continue to respond to these threats in the future. There's this big misconception that because Gen Z is so chronically online, that we are aware of like deep fakes, we are able to easily identify, different cybersecurity threats, but that's not necessarily true. And so I look at my peers and frankly, I look at myself. I have made many cybersecurity like no-nos, things I should not be doing. And I just wonder, as it gets harder, how am I supposed to be able to adapt and grow and make sure that I'm being really cognizant of my data and my privacy? To go back to your original question about like unique challenges that institutions might face, I think a good way of phrasing that is what unique challenges will Gen Z face and how will they continue to adapt and learn? And I guess perceive those struggles.
When we look at cyber and cybersecurity, on the impact side here at Kyndryl, we also are training elderly women in rural India who've started their own businesses how to be cyber secure. So when you talk about that intergenerational, it's the Amulias of the world, and then it's these women who I'm dying to meet one day in India, because we all know we don't have these tools. And in order for, whether it's a small business or a nonprofit organization or a faith-based organization, that we all are at risk, right? So how do we continue to bring awareness and tools and education to this work?
Well, so you've actually telegraphing my next question, which is really just about how do partnerships between the large enterprises and smaller organizations. First of all, let's just talk about how you all work together.
This is a beautiful and fruitful and a partnership that works both ways. And when we look at from a Kyndryl perspective, Girls Security is one of our foundation grantees, and this is our first year of grants. And they're exactly the kind of partner that we are looking for when we grant out our foundation dollars. And we know that it's not just our responsibility, but it's the importance of not just funding, but really partnering with organizations in a 360-degree partnership that we're learning from them, they're learning from us. We know that we have experts here at Kyndryl who are experts in cybersecurity. So how can we not just financially support their organization, but how could we bring in our incredible, especially female experts, here at Kyndryl to support and really foster and grow the work that Girls Security is doing. This is just the beginning of our work together. And truthfully, we know that whether it's tech companies or media companies, whatever the brand is, to foster and look for, these kinds of relationships and partnerships because they're in the communities, they're doing the work, and they're reaching the people.
One thing that this makes me think of, I'm following one of your threads, is just women in the discipline of cybersecurity to begin with. I mean, my understanding is that it's a very underrepresented group. Could you tell us a little bit more about what the current environment looks like for women?
So I am, a woman in STEM. I go to a male-dominated engineering school. I'm one of very few women in my classes. And I often look around and I'm like, where is the community, the support? It can feel very isolating, especially when you're not doing good in the class or you're wondering why your male counterparts are doing significantly better than you. And frankly, it's because they have community. And so sometimes I look back and I'm like, if I didn't have the support of my mentor through Girl Security or a community I could surround myself with and gain that support I need to succeed in my classes, I'm not sure what I would do. And so I think it's really fundamental that organizations like Girl Security exist to give women representation that is so desperately needed. So when you look around, it's like you can feel like you're drowning and you're not sure where to go to. So I think it's really important that we have organizations like Girl Security. And I think that when it comes to partnerships with corporations, I think it's so important that corporations partner because they can provide funding, resources with nonprofits who kind of do the grassroots types of work.
Well, I mean, it's interesting. So you also work a lot on mentorship and professional development for girls who are in the program. Can you talk a little bit about what you do?
Yeah. So I work on the mentorship and professional development side. So Girl Security offers 2 mentorship seasons in 1 calendar year. We're doing a winter one and a summer one, and they're each 3 months long. And what's really nice is that we have mentees who have different varying levels of interest in national security, from beginning to intermediate to advanced. And so it's really nice to connect them with a mentor who can help fulfill their needs. And something that we do in our mentorship program is we focus on coaching inspired mentorship. And so that's basically a two-way street. We want our mentor and our mentees to grow both, and we want them to listen actively. We want them to come out of the mentorship feeling like they both successfully have grown in some way. And so it's really inspiring to hear testimonies of girls who come in not knowing what national security is, but leave with okay, I'm definitely going to work in this field. I have charted a path forward. I have a support system. And so it's really nice that we have mentors of varying level of experiences who kind of can match our needs of our mentees.
And I just add, I think the mentorship is really critical to the success of the program because we are going into high school level participants and they can enter our mentoring program at 14 or 15. Then they can complete our workforce training program. But after that, we don't want them to feel like there isn't a net for them. So between the professional advancement, the career coaching, and the continued mentorship, it is a reassurance to them that we won't disappear once they complete one aspect of the program.
You're working with high school. Amelia is in college. So what is the journey of one of the members of your program?
I mean, I think Amelia kind of represents it. She began as a high school student. That's sort of the ideal, is that, that's even, based on the social science behind when girls and women start to question their STEM capabilities, which is actually in middle school, if not earlier. By high school, we're capturing them at a really critical waypoint where they may or may not be considering college and or career. And so ideally, they enter the mentoring program and really just trust the organization and have a positive mentoring experience. And if they decide that there's a pathway they want to pursue, then we want to see them apply to our workforce program, which is very robust. Once they complete the workforce program, they have an opportunity to complete a cybersecurity certification with Google or an AI fundamentals or a open threat intelligence model with Microsoft Security. So they have different avenues available to them. I mean, that's the ideal. And then sort of the final frontier is that they become a mentor to someone else. So fostering that cycle of mentorship and giving back is also not just an effective way to keep people involved, but it ensures that as they advance into the workforce, that they bring all of those values with them into their communities and their workplaces as well.
No, Lauren, God, I could listen to you and Amelia talk all day. And as I think about also being, a female in tech, although, I'm new to this space because of my background is entertainment and media, but as I've been at Kyndryl a little over a year now, what I have learned and I have really loved seeing is is our female leaders really pay attention to this space. And when I look at leaders like Chris Lovejoy, who's one of our, global leads of security and resilience, when I look at our North American president, Amy Salcido, who are just dying for young women to enter the world of tech and really pay attention to that, there's a lot to be said about that. Nothing's better than when we have students like yourself, Amelia, come into the Kyndryl offices and a light bulb go off to say, that could be me, right? And whether they're going to be in cyber or other, if you only know what you know and you don't know what you don't know, right? So when it's put in front of you and you see a young girl's life just really change at the thought of like a conversation of like, oh, I didn't even know that was on a career path. It's nice to be in a culture, and it's obviously girl security is like that, but it's nice to be in a corporate culture that really pays attention to that. And I think, finding like-minded partners like we did, obviously, Lauren is leading an incredible organization there, and a lot of it is relationship building. And clearly we really hit it off. So a lot of it is that, but the work that Girl Security is doing just so aligns with the values of our organization.
I remember when I was in middle school, a lot of this felt unattainable. Like I could never reach a point where like I could ever be in this career, ever succeed in this career. But I think that as I did the fellowship, I did the mentorship, I gained a lot more confidence. And it was actually through our corporate partnerships that really gave me that boost in terms of like, I could write an article for one of our corporate partnerships. I could help work on a real life project. And it kind of all made sense. All the puzzles were starting to come together. And so when I entered college, it kind of gave me a sense of morale in the sense, I have real life experience. I have a support system.
There's also there are business and societal reasons to have diversity and around lived experiences that really in design, I believe strongly that the people designing for people using something should represent that community. So and have the lived experiences because we'll see something different. And so I guess that's what I'm curious about, how that translates into security. How does having this different lived experience give you an advantage? I don't know.
One of the young girls I met with yesterday, her family originated outside of the United States and had interactions with international organized crime, right? And so her experience was very much shaped by, I want to go into technology and I want to create this mechanism that will solve for this harm. We hear that story time and time again. If I had $1 for every time we heard a story like that, we would be conquering the universe in all the best ways. To see girls and young women who have already had security experiences that some people hopefully don't have to fathom, they not only bring a set of insights and skills and perspectives, but they also bring in our minds a sense of societal resilience that we need, because we know there is no full sense of security within the digital ecosystem. There will always be vulnerabilities. And nobody understands that better than girls and women who grow up never knowing what it means to be fully secure, regardless of your circumstances. And I think we really imagine a world in which responses to things like cybersecurity or generative AI leverage and bring to bear that sort of mosaic of perspectives. And we see it in participants in our program as young as 12, 13, 14, 15, up to Amelia and beyond. And I think, there's plenty of data and studies that various, really prominent institutions have done about the impact of diversity on outcomes, on profitability. I believe in all of that, but I think the narratives that are shared in our program are more powerful than the data oftentimes. We adhere assiduously to the idea that it's not our job to tell girls and women what to think about what they are learning in our organization. We frame it as, we will explain the history of how these things have developed and are currently being deployed, but we want to empower them with things like design thinking challenges, opportunities to engage with thought leaders, to inform policy lawmaking through their lived experience. So we're giving them the tools to craft their own voice and message, and then leveraging the power of our networks to get those voices heard. And we've had a lot of success doing that, but there's a lot more work to be done, of course.
You're giving the women, in addition to being able to do technical things, that they're able to put it into a context. to figure out what's that gnarly problem we're trying to solve and how do we creatively solve it. All of that is to say, I'm just saying yes, yes, girl security.
Yeah. And Sarah, and have conversations like this and really open, transparent conversations with public, private organizations to really put up on the forefront of bringing these issues front and center. And at the same time, it's giving back to Kyndryls also, right? Like our leaders and our people want to be part of these conversations, solutions, community impact. I mean, it's part of our culture. And I hope that other companies that you guys partner with, that their culture is seeking that same kind of connection. We know we're the experts in certain things, but you guys are really on the ground lifting up, that next generation of female tech leaders and innovators and creators. And who doesn't want to be a part of that?
I don't know. I do.
I know you do, Laura. You made it happen.
I'd like to add a couple of words. I'm not sure what I'll do with my degree, but I do know that I do want to make institutional and fundamental change, especially in a corporate setting, because that's where it starts. It all trickles down, And I know that I can do that because I have a community, and I have a community right here just talking to you guys. I feel supported. I know that if I want to make these changes, I can make these changes. I'm glad we're having a conversation about it because it just doesn't happen very often, It doesn't happen very often. So I'm grateful that we're able to sit down and talk about this.
So Amelia, while we're with you, what advice do you have for students and professionals, but I think in particular students who might be interested to enter the cybersecurity community?
That's a good one. So I used to be very insecure about maybe my weaknesses or things I wasn't like my background. For example, I am hearing impaired. And so I was thinking, that's a deficit, but no, in fact, it's not a deficit. It's an advantage. All your skills and your entire personality, whatever makes you is an advantage in every single way. Leverage that. I used to be so afraid of things that might cause a setback, but I've learned to really embrace my full sense, my full body. And I think that I've been able to do that because I've been so grateful enough to be given a support system that kind of empowers me to, do what I want to do despite everything. And so leverage everything you have. You bring things to the table, realize that, I hope that you may not think it, but I know I bring things to the table. You bring things to the table. Every unique part of you is something that you can leverage.
Well, how about you, Lauren? What would be some advice to people interested?
I have to give a shout out to our learning and training team, Shannon Harrison, Monica Sanchez, and Jane Pack, and Gina Bennett. But Shannon said something actually at the summer program where we were joined by Kyndryls. She said it's not enough to just tell people they belong. It's important to tell them that we want them and need them here. And so I think that's the message that I continue to take to schools and communities is that we want you to be here. We need you to be here. The future of so many different things requires and necessitates the involvement of diverse people broadly, but certainly girls and women. So I think that message is something that I will continue to reiterate and bring to the people in the communities we serve.
All right. Well, so I actually don't want to end this conversation because I feel like we could talk. There's so much more ground to cover, but I really appreciate the three of you coming and having this conversation with me. And I can't really underscore the importance of having these conversations. I think we're all in violent agreement about that. So thank you so much for joining.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks, Amelia. Thanks, Lauren. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you for joining us on the Progress Report. If you enjoyed this content, please subscribe, and share it with your friends and colleagues. You can find it on any of the podcast platforms.